On my personal behalf and on behalf of the members of the Pakistan Students Association, I welcome here tonight Dr. George C. Christensen, who is our chief guest for the occasion, Dr. Anwar Syed, who is our keynote speaker, who has traversed all the way from Massachusetts, distinguished members of the faculty and staff, my fellow students, and ladies and gentlemen. It gives us a pleasure to see you all here on this day. Our program follows with a recital from the Holy Quran by a fellow student of ours, a member of PSA, followed by its English translation. So I would like to ask Mr. Sardar to come to the microphone, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء عرفها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنعام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Now I'll read the translation in English. God most gracious, it is He who has taught the Quran. He has created man. He has taught him speech and intelligence. The sun and the moon follow courses exactly computed, and the herbs and the trees both bow in adoration. And the firmament has He raised high, and He has set up the balance of justice, in order that ye may not transgress balance. So establish weight with justice, and fall not short in balance. It is He who has spread out the earth for His creatures. Therein is fruit and date, palms producing spathes, also corn with leaves and stalk for fodder, and sweet-smelling plants. Then which of the favors of your Lord will ye deny? Thank you.
This then is our annual function. We host it every year to commemorate the Pakistan Day, which the resolution actually was passed in 1940. Now, as every organization, we too have a president of an organization, a graduating senior in EE, and so if your toaster doesn't work, you know whom to get. Mr. Irfan Aziz.
Thank you, Abid, for introducing me so well. I'd like to welcome all of you here this evening to our Pakistan Day commemoration evening, I guess. We are very grateful here this evening to have with us some very distinguished people. Foremost, I would like to welcome Professor George C. Christensen, who was very kind to have accepted our invitation to come here this evening. We also have Professor Anwar Syed, who has probably already been introduced by my friend Abid. Professor Syed is a distinguished Pakistani scholar at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. I'd like to thank him for having accepted our invitation to come here and talk to you this evening. I hope you will like what he has to say, and it will help you understand some of the problems that Pakistan and the people of Pakistan are facing. The Pakistan Student Association is also very grateful to Professor James Lowry, who is our faculty advisor this year. Professor Lowry has been of tremendous help to us in organizing this evening. He offered some very useful advice and helped us arrange some of the things which we probably could not have done on our own. And I'd like to thank him for that. Some of our exhibition things we have tonight have been made possible by what we brought from the International Resource Center at the Office of International Educational Services. I'd like to thank all members of the staff there who very carefully have kept all these things which we have been using over the years now. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank Ms. Violet Schneider, an American citizen who was in Pakistan some time back with her husband, and who brought along with her some very precious, I should say, antiques and handicraft products which are made in different parts of Pakistan. She was very kind to have offered to let us use things tonight, and I'm sure some of you have seen some of her things on the exhibition. The event tonight is a collection of efforts which has a major contribution by all members of the Pakistan Students Association, by all other friends who, though not being members, have helped us to set up a room this evening here. I'd like to thank all of them for the cooperation they extended. Lastly, I guess, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here tonight. I hope the program we have this evening would be of interest to you, and you will find what we have to offer to be stimulating, and will help you understand better what Pakistan Day stands for and what our problems which we face now in Pakistan are. And so I guess I welcome you all. We'd like to get started now. We're already a little behind schedule. Thank you.
Our chief guest, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is Dr. George C. Christensen. Dr. Christensen, as we all know, is the Vice President for Academic Affairs in this institution here. Before assuming this post, he was the Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine. I need not elaborate his meritorious academic career, and to do so would just be an exercise in futility. So without any further delay, I would ask Dr. Christensen to come to the microphone and address us all.
Thank you. I am very pleased and very honored to be part of this commemoration of Pakistan Day. It is a very happy occasion. I noticed the program when I came in. It stated that I am supposed to give a speech. I want to make this even a happier occasion by telling you I am not going to make a speech. Thank you. I'm going to give you a greeting, and I'll make it short. I am very, very pleased that the 12, I guess 13 Pakistan students here have taken it upon themselves to have this event for us, friends of Pakistan, to understand more about the culture of Pakistan, understand more about the political aspects of Pakistan, to hear from Professor Saeed, and to see a film this evening. I certainly am looking forward to it with great zeal. I'd want to say, too, that as far as Iowa State University is concerned, we have had a very long commitment to international programs and to international students. And we've done this in many ways, but I'll very briefly cite three. One, for many years, we have sent faculty members, professionals, to essentially all the continents of the world to study and to teach. Dr. Wayne Schultes in the audience tonight has certainly taught, done research in Pakistan. Others here have studied and taught in other countries throughout the world. This is a major function and responsibility of this university. We also very happily provide American students with the opportunities to study in countries all over the world. This is constantly going on and provides a tremendous experience for these American students. But our biggest commitment, and the part of our program, university program, which is most satisfying to all of us, is the fact that so many students from foreign countries choose Iowa State University as a place to come and study. Because by bringing your cultures to us, you leave us much richer for the experience. Many of you, most of you, perhaps all of you, whether you're from Pakistan or from other countries outside the United States, will be going home when you receive your degrees. I just want to assure you that you will always be part of the United States. You may not think so, but I can assure you, when the Alumni Association get your name, get your address, they'll keep you informed, they'll keep you in contact, they'll even ask you for money at times. They'll want you to be a full participating member of this university for as long as you live. You will always be part of this country. Again, we are very pleased that you are here as students. We're very happy to help celebrate this occasion this evening, and I, for one, am looking forward to the program. Thank you very much.
My thanks to Dr. Christensen for being here tonight in spite of his busy schedule. Politics is a subject that interests us all, and I guess most of us, if not actively participate in it, like to hear about it. And a major item of our news would just be boring without politics, such is our state of the world today. And Pakistan is a part of this world, and so it is not excluded from the political upheavals of what goes on and what not. Our lecture tonight here is a series on that topic, and the topic is Pakistan, a quest for identity. Our keynote speaker on this subject, as I mentioned earlier, is Dr. Anwar Syed. Now, Dr. Syed has a very successful academic career here in the States and as well as in Pakistan too. Currently, he's a professor of political science at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He's the author of a number of books. One especially, which I kind of was most impressed, was one on the relations between Pakistan and China. Dr. Anwar Syed had come all the way from Boston, and though we had some anxious moments, we never know how the weather is going to be, but he is here tonight, and I would ask him to address you all. Dr. Anwar Syed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, Dr. Christensen, ladies and gentlemen, may I first say how delighted I am to be able to have had this opportunity of visiting your lovely campus. When I go back, I will tell my friends at Amherst, Massachusetts, that if Your campus is not quite as lovely as my own. It is probably my provincial Massachusetts chauvinism. My friends here have cautioned me that you as an audience are very discriminating and that your patience is neither to be taken for granted nor to be trifled with. As you know, I am by occupation a professor, and you know also that professors make money by talking. My natural inclination is to be expansive. But considering the word of caution said to me, I will try to limit myself to the time they have indicated, which is 30 minutes, but I will not look at my watch too frequently. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject that I have been asked to speak on is Pakistan's quest for identity. I wish it were a lighter kind of a subject so I could get away with delivering a resounding kind of a speech instead of a lecture. It's a very intricate kind of a matter, a very complex one, and I would be insulting your intelligence if I did not deal with it at the plane to which it belongs, which is complex and intricate, as I said. May I first say that Pakistan's quest for identity is a quest which Pakistan shares with a great many other developing countries and perhaps even some developed countries. Normally, when we think of France or Britain or Germany or Belgium or Holland or even the United States, it does not occur to us that any of them might be engaged in a search for identity. We take it for granted that the matter of their identity has been long since settled and it's not in question anymore. However, if you were to take the time for a second thought and were to look just across the border in Canada and Quebec's desire for secession and separatism, and since the Scots have found oil in the North Sea, you may have heard that they've had some ripples of separatism, and same way with some groups in Spain and Yugoslavia and so forth. You might find that national integration or the settlement of identity are matters which are not irretrievably settled, that they can always be rolled back, and countries or nations that we thought were well-settled nations can become unsettled. At any rate, coming to Pakistan, I think there are 2 points that I would like first to make. The quest for identity becomes relevant because Pakistan, as you all know, was ruled by a foreign power, that is to say Great Britain, for a couple of 100 years. As you might expect, in the course of those 200 years, the British imposed upon the Indian subcontinent not only a system of political rule, but also imparted to the people of the subcontinent, for better or for worse, a certain measure, perhaps a large measure, of their own values and their lifestyles, and perhaps even their ways of thinking. And after the termination of that imperial rule, it seems to me appropriate that the nations of the Indian subcontinent, having freed themselves from that rule politically, would want to free themselves of that rule psychologically also. In other words, you would expect them to want to be themselves rather than somebody else. In the case of Pakistan, there is another perhaps interesting, perhaps agonizing, depending upon where you stand, a reason, which is that, as you perhaps all know, some 8 or so years ago, Pakistan went through a very bloody kind of a civil war. As a result of that civil war, one part of Pakistan seceded from the Union and became Bangladesh. Perhaps you have read in the newspapers here and there, or heard on the TV or the radio from time to time, that allegedly there are some separatist movements in other parts of what remains of Pakistan. For instance, in Balochistan and in the northwestern frontier regions of the country. What does the East Pakistani secession in 1971 mean? Or what would separatism in Balochistan or the northwestern frontier region would mean? At one level, perhaps it would be fair to say that when the East Pakistani people seceded from the Union and became Bangladesh, they were saying that they did not wish to be Pakistanis anymore. Or if some people in Pakistan's Balochistan, or NWFP as it is called, want to be separatists, once again you might say that perhaps they are saying that they do not wish to be Pakistanis anymore. In other words, the East Pakistanis, when they seceded, expressed dissatisfaction with Pakistani identity. Perhaps the separatists in other parts of Pakistan are expressing dissatisfaction with what supposedly or what officially the Pakistani identity is. And so, at the level of wanting to be themselves, and then in the context of this emerging separatism, the issue of identity is a crucial one in Pakistan. Crucial in the sense that it touches the very survival of the country as a country. Now, what is the official version, or perhaps you might even say the more popular version of Pakistan's identity? The conventional wisdom in Pakistan has it that the movement for Pakistan's coming into being was waged in the name of Islam. That Pakistan was created in the name of Islam. And therefore, any identity that is viable in Pakistan has to be an Islamic identity. In other words, in this conventional wisdom, if you ask Pakistanis who they are, they would say they are an Islamic people or that they are Muslim. I don't want to go into, partly because I don't have the time, I don't want to go into the historicity of this claim as to whether Pakistan was intended to be an Islamic polity or not. But let us say that a very, very strong and prevailing opinion in Pakistan answers the question of identity the way I have mentioned to you, that the issue of identity comes down to Pakistan being an Islamic nation. The question then may be, what about it? Is there anything missing here? Well, this answer, the official or the conventional wisdom kind of answer, has been given for 30 years. That Pakistanis are a Muslim nation, and from that they derive their identity. And yet, East Pakistan separated. And yet, we hear that there are separatist movements in Baluchistan and the northwestern regions of Pakistan. Meaning, then, that the common bond of Islam, or the fact that the vast majority of Pakistanis share a common faith in Islam, was not a sufficient cement to hold them all together. That it was not enough to build a system of solidarity and domestic and national cohesion to maintain the country's and the nation's integrity. Now, here, if you are looking at this from the perspective of an outsider, which most of you are able to do, this should be easy to understand. The failure is not uniquely a failure in Islam. Ideology over the long run has nowhere been able to serve as a unifying goal and serve as a preservative of that unity over extended periods of time. I call your attention not only to the world of Christendom, where Christians have fought Christians for centuries and centuries, and the fact that they were all Christians never stopped them from slaughtering each other. I could also call your attention to the fact that in the communist world, a very great schism took place some 20 years ago. And during these 20 years, not a day passes without Moscow hurling all kinds of abuses at Peking, and Peking answering in the same coin. The fact that both Peking and Moscow belong to the communist family and to the communist ideology does not unite them. And even little Albania and rather small Yugoslavia have been hurling abuses at Moscow for 30 years. I think you might say that the fact of common faith in Islam is a key to Pakistani identity in a confrontational situation with the outsider. In other words, if the Pakistanis are interacting, let us say, with a Western nation, they could say, well, you are Christians, we are Muslim. They could say, you are capitalists, you are socialists, you are communists, but we are Muslim. So in a context of juxtaposition to the outsider, the fact of Islamic identity is relevant. But if you are looking at Pakistan's problem of inner domestic cohesion, then what you find is that faith in Islam is only a part of a Pakistani's identity. He believes in Allah, he believes in Muhammad as the prophet, he believes in a great many other prophets, prophets of the Old Testament, for instance, who are recognized by the Quran. He says his prayers, he fasts during the month of fasting. He's a God-fearing Muslim. But in addition to that, he is many other things. He may be a Punjabi, meaning a person belonging to the province of Punjab, or he may be a Sindhi, belonging to Sindh, or Baluchi, or Pathan. Now, what does it mean being a Punjabi, or a Baluchi, or a Sindhi, or a Pathan? It means that you speak the Punjabi language, or the Pushto, or the Baluchi, or the Sindhi language. And if you reflect upon this matter of language, you will perhaps want to agree with me that nothing expresses a person's personality as much as his language does. It is from that language that he derives his thought processes, from which he derives his metaphor, his idiom, his jokes, his jibes, even his gesticulations, the way he looks at things, and so forth. In other words, Pakistan is not only a Muslim country, Pakistan is a culturally, linguistically, and to some extent even ethnically, a diverse country. And therefore, if the question of Pakistan's identity is to be responded to as a whole, then you have to take note of these other ingredients besides Islam. In other words, you might say that Pakistani identity might proceed towards creating a composite kind of a Pakistani culture. My own interpretation of this matter is that the preservative that Pakistan needs is not Muslim nationalism, but Pakistani nationalism. A Pakistani nationalism which would include Islam, but it would include also the other things that I have mentioned to you. Now, considering that 97% of Pakistanis are Muslim, you might ask me, what the hell would the difference be between a Pakistani nationalism and a Muslim nationalism? And I think what I would say is what I have just said to you, that it would include not only the common faith in Islam, but the cultural aspect. Now, composite cultures are not made to order. I mean, you can't decide as a matter of policy that you're going to have a Pakistani composite culture, and next day that composite culture is just waiting around the corner for you to pick up. Composite cultures take decades, perhaps scores of years, perhaps even longer. And so, a Pakistani composite culture would have to be a long-term kind of a goal. But what about the short term then? Once again, I would submit to you that a reasonably good beginning towards a Pakistani identity can be made if the diverse people of Pakistan, especially in the minority regions, can begin to have the feeling that being a Pakistani is a good thing. Now, what do I mean by that? Being a Pakistani is a good thing. I think what I mean is that if the people of Pakistan were to feel that the economic system, the distributive system, the political system was civil, humane, egalitarian, and so forth, and that the political system was such in which the regional personalities had self-expression, that they had the feeling of being respected by the other regional personalities, then I think the feeling would begin to generate in Pakistan, in Baluchistan, in Sindh, in the northwest frontier area, which are the minority regions of Pakistan, that being a Pakistani is a jolly good idea. Now, who creates these feelings? You all know, I'm sure, that it is the elite who create these feelings. They are the ones who can activate diversities to serve as disintegrative agents, and it is they who can agitate similarities to serve as integrative agents. And so, in a way, the building of a Pakistani personality depends upon whether the regional elite in Pakistan, or you might say the regional counter-elite, not the ruling elite, but the counter-elite, if they are satisfied with the power sharing that is available in the political system. A great many of the political leaders whom I am calling the regional counter-elite have spent substantial parts of their lives in preventive detention. In preventive detention, meaning in jail, as political prisoners. Now, if Pakistan were to mean to these political leaders as extended and frequent periods of preventive detention or jail, then it would be hard for them to get the feeling that being a Pakistani is a great idea. Because so far, people have not learned to love jails. Perhaps someday they might. I hope that day never comes. But jails are not a very attractive place to be in. So, on the other hand, if Pakistan were to mean to these people sharing power, a certain amount of political patronage, some development projects in their regions over which they have control, some wheeling and dealing, and so forth, things that you would call a fruit of political victory. I think if the political system were to permit a competitive kind of a politics, in other words, a democratic kind of a politics, instead of an authoritarian kind of politics that Pakistan has had more often than not, the way is paved for developing a national identity that would act as a preservative of Pakistani unity and integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll stop here, and then if there are things that you want to explore with me, feel free to raise them. The folks that have organized this affair said to me that you would probably want me to say something about Mr. Bhutto, who's currently in jail under sentence of death and may be executed perhaps any day, and what, if anything, his execution might mean for the future of Pakistan. I haven't brought that in because I thought that if I did so, I would be straining the train of thought that I was pursuing. But if any of you want to raise that, I'll be happy to respond to that or to any other questions that you may have. I thank you. Thank you. Yes. hard to say because the general who is ruling the country right now, he has repeatedly said that he would hold elections. He said when he came to power in July of 1977, he said he would hold them in October of that year. Then he postponed them to the following year. And then he postponed them to the October of this year. He keeps saying also that he would hold elections if he can be reasonably certain that results would be positive. Now, I think left to himself, he would probably not be eager to hold elections. But there is a reassuring kind of a factor here, which is that the people of Pakistan, the masses, have already launched two great movements for ousting dictators and in behalf of their demands for restoring democracy. One in 1969 when they ousted Ayub Khan, and then one in 77 when they ousted Mr. Bhutto, or prepared the ground for Mr. Bhutto's ouster. My own feeling is that if the general does not hold elections this year, I am almost certain that there will be a mass movement again for his ouster. In other words, the people of Pakistan are ready for a democracy. Yes, sir.
To what degree would Islam encourage the return of democracy?
You see, Islam, like perhaps Christianity, perhaps a number of other religious systems, would yield almost anything that you wanted. In other words, if you are looking for precedents to support democracy, you will most certainly find them. If you are looking for a limited kind of a democracy, once again you will find precedents. And if you are looking for plain authoritarianism, then too you will not be disappointed. Yes, sir.
You, as I understood from your speech, you said that the concept of nationality is the best to unite the nation. We, the Arab people, our countries applied almost all the concepts, but right now, all of them did not work in our country. We, inside our country, suffering, and outside. We have 13 Arab countries, applied all these concepts, and it does not work right now. Even the conference of our leaders or like that, right now it doesn't work. How come you said that the idea or the concept of nationality is works very well? And then you said that, or you deduced from the separation of Bangladesh that Islam is not good or for unity. How come you said that, and you know that Bangladesh separated by the many influences, from these influences by India influence and other influences? And you know that in Pakistan there is many influences from outside the country. How come you say that and you neglect all the outside influences?
I think you may have misunderstood me just a little bit. I have not said that Islam is not good. What I have said is that Islam alone will not be able to do the job. You might say that Islam alone will not be able to do the job because the Muslims of Pakistan are not all that good Muslims. Just as the Christians of America or the Jews of America are not all that good Christians or good Jews. You see, Islam is a model for organizing your economic, social, and political life. But it will work only if you practice it. And since the practice of Islam in Pakistan and in the Arab world is just as imperfect as the practice of Christianity or Judaism here, or the practice of communism in Russia, if the practice is imperfect, the results will also be imperfect. Now, so far as the outside influences are concerned, I don't deny that there were, and there usually are, outsiders ready, willing, and anxious to take advantage. But you see, the outsider can take advantage only if advantage is to be had, if there is something there for him to exploit. If the people are already quarreling among themselves, then the outsider can come in and fan the fires of discord and take advantage. But I think you would be oversimplifying the problem if you thought that the outsider creates the problem. But you feel free to argue a little further.
When you said your speech was clear, when you said that the nationality is better and is the fairest place to the nation to unite on. So when you said that, that means Islam is not good for that. So when you said that, and when you answer this gentleman here, Islam like Christianity, in the same time, Islam is different completely than Christianity, that so then really you talk about a topic you did not know about it very well. So I suggest that to know about Islam more. Let's talk about it.
I want to thank you for your advice. I thought I knew a good deal, but we never know enough about anything, and I will try to learn more. Yes, sir. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Do you think a culture based upon Islam is a wise choice? I'm mostly referring to the things happened in 1945 or sometime around that, when the separation of Pakistan from India had hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Sikhs have been suffered and killed because of Islamic prejudice or any kind of religious prejudice.
You see, when you ask me whether a culture based upon Islam is a good idea or a bad idea, or a wise idea, you are assuming that such a culture is to be created. I mean, if it were a matter of policy choice as to whether to create such a culture or not, the question that you are posing would be a very relevant one. But that is not the situation. An Islam-based culture has existed in the Indian subcontinent for 700 years. And so it is not a culture to be created, it already exists. The question that I have been discussing with you, to the disappointment of my friend over there, is whether it is sufficient, or in other words, whether it needs to be supplemented by some other aspects of culture which also exist. Am I evading your question, or is that a fair response?
You might have a certain way, strengthen this belief in Islam, or don't strengthen it. Do you think that they will strengthen this basic idea of culture depending on Islam? Will they force not force, they will try to overemphasis the relation between culture and Islam.
I think what I will say is that what will really strengthen Pakistan is a political system which treats the adversaries of the regime in power in a democratic sort of a way. In other words, so long as the counter elite in Pakistan can see that they're free to make speeches, they're free to organize demonstrations, they are free to hold public meetings, they're free to publish their newspapers, they're free to come on the radio, on the television, that they're free to run in the elections, and then if they win, they are free to rule. I think that is what, to my mind, is crucial to the development of a national identity which will be viable. But let me approach your question in another way. You see, now, at this time, and for the last few years, it is said that there have been stirrings of separatism in Baluchistan and the Pathan regions of Pakistan. Now, supposing the majority province in Pakistan, which is the Punjab, were to hearken to the Pathans and the Baluchis, saying, remember, we are Muslims. The Baluchis and the Pathans will say to the Punjabis, fellas, you've been Muslims for a couple of 100 years. We've been Muslims for 1,000 years. How come you are talking Islam to us? You are Muslim, we are Muslim, we are all Muslim. What is new? Where do we go from here? Who gets the jobs? Who gets the jobs? Who gets the development projects? Who gets the dams? Who gets electricity and the tube wells and the roads and the hospitals and the schools? Let's talk about those things. Islam is okay, we are all Muslims. Does that do anything for you? Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you talked about the elite of Pakistan. Now, the most elite of Pakistan, you talked about, they migrated from India. During the regime of Ayub Khan, during the regime of Bhutto, they didn't get very much chance to practice their religiousness. But those are a very minority people. Yet, people from Punjab, frontier, Balochistan, have not raised their voice so far. And these elites want to make a decision for the whole country because they do not get a chance to participate in the government. Every time we see during the Bhutto regime, during the Ayub Khan regime, they come and overthrow the government. So, if the majority of the people are willing to go along with the present government, whatever it is, then why these people should come every time and create a problem?
Sir, I am not altogether sure that I have understood you. Why don't you come up here and talk from the mic so that I may understand better and the audience may too?
Now, my question I impose is that, see, the majority elite in Pakistan have migrated from India. And the people of original Pakistan in Punjab, in frontier, in Balochistan, in Sindh, I hope you can hear me, are not, I mean, during the Ayub Khan, the economics were going really good, everything was good, but this elite who migrated from India were not given a fair chance. So they came and made the strikes, get him out of the politics. Then came the Bhutto. They did the same thing. Yet, if you go back before the Bhutto, this elite were ruling the country. They didn't do a very good job, I mean, compared to the Ayub Khan did or Bhutto did for the country. Now they got the Bhutto, they're going to hang him pretty soon. So, I mean, if you give a chance to this elite to work as a Democrat, I mean, let me summarize the state of Pakistan. As one German scientist said, Pakistan is a ship with the golden bolts on it. From captain to the crew is trying to take those bolts out. But they don't know when they'll finish taking all the boat will sink. So my idea is to let one person run the country and see where we go, rather than changing the government every 5 years, because the minority of people who are educated yet, they do not get a chance to run the country. And let the 95% of the people decide their fate of the country.
Okay. I think I'll take the punchline as the question and respond to that. The punchline being that let one man run the country and see what happens. Well, we have one man running the country now. Before that, Mr. Bhutto, even though he was an elected prime minister, was essentially a one-man ruler. And he ruled for 5 years, or more than 5 years. Before that, we had Yahya Khan, who ruled for 2.5 years, and he was also one man. And before that, we had Ayub Khan, and he ruled for 10.5 years, and that was also one-man rule. So we've seen one-man rule some 5 or 6 times. And we know what it did for the country. And therefore, and I think you might say also that regardless of my personal predilection or your personal predilection, the people of Pakistan, for better or for worse, and I personally think for the better, now are insisting upon a restoration of democracy. And if you don't give it to them, they will riot. And to me personally, that's a very pleasant prospect, that they will force a restoration of democracy if those at the helm of affairs don't want to restore it. I think in that restoration of democracy lies a much greater assurance of Pakistan's survival and Pakistan's solidity and security and stability and solidarity than in any one-man rule. Thank you.
We thank Dr. Anwar Sayyed for his very informative, intelligent, illustrious speech. Learning, as we all know, is an ongoing process, and certainly was tonight too. We gained some further insights. As far as differences are concerned, that's the state of the subject of politics. The feelings tends to run high, people have different philosophies, and two politicians are never going to agree to the same strategy unless something drastically happens to both of them. So tonight we are 3/4 down our program. We have an intermission now, and in the intermission, my reason for cutting the further questions out was that those who are interested can ask or can avail this opportunity to ask Dr. Sayyed some further questions, and I would very much like all of you to have a second serve. After that, we got a short movie called The Land of Indus. It runs about 30 minutes in length. Now, what the movie does was in some ways supplements what Dr. Anwar Sayyed was saying. It highlights the different cultural groups in Pakistan and the 4 provinces, and which we all know to some extent does cause problems in there. Once again, I thank you all and hope you would remain with us. So please help yourself to a second serve.